Hey guys, how's everyone doing? Welcome to the show. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever, albeit in a slightly different format than normal. I know it's been a few days. If you're wondering why, you've been out of the loop. Just drove across the country. We pulled into Seattle late last night, just in time for the sunset, by the way. 5 days of driving, 2,500 miles, 10 different states, all to get here in time for training camp. Still waiting on word from the Seahawks. They're supposed to be reviewing applications today. I was told previously I'd be given access to at least the first few days of camp, and then they'll make a bigger decision about the full season. Fingers crossed. But in the meantime, got some errands to run, and so I thought, I'm back at Seattle traffic. Certainly the one thing I did not miss about my hometown, and something that you can literally travel and drive around the entirety of the United States of America, as I have in the last few months, and hardly run into any traffic at all, unless there are lane closures and construction on the highway. Looking at you, Idaho. And not run into traffic, and yet here I am. Wanted to react to the news of Noah Fant being released yesterday by the Seahawks. This was something that had been speculated by many of you all throughout the offseason, or viewing Fant as a trade target all throughout the offseason. I don't think a week has gone by that one of you hasn't brought it up either on one of my shows or through Twitter conversation. Hey, can they trade Noah Fant? Shouldn't they trade Noah Fant? They've got all these young tight ends. And I was steadfast and consistent all offseason in saying, no, it's not going to happen. At least not, maybe you get into camp and you realize that these other guys, that you're fine, that you feel comfortable at the position, and that Fant in the last year of his deal doesn't give you the value you want. You'd rather not take those reps away from some other younger players. And then needs arise sometimes after camp starts. Injuries, poor performance, contract disputes, what have you. The reason that I had pushed back all offseason on the idea of moving on from Noah Fant is because the Seahawks, under John Schneider and their leadership and their organization, the entire time that he was with Pete Carroll, but we even saw it last year in the offseason, when they make moves to move on from veterans for the sake of cap space, when they feel like the cap doesn't match the performance, they do it early in the offseason. They do it definitively, decisively at the beginning of the offseason, in part to take care of that player, to take care of that person, give them the best opportunity to get out into the market when teams don't have their roster set and they have all of their available cap space. Even early in the offseason, I pushed back against the idea of trying to trade Noah Fant because of supply and demand. We knew that this was going to be a very deep tight end draft that was very good at the top, had some blue chip prospects, but also went 10 to 15 deep in some really intriguing guys kind of littered throughout the rest of the draft. Well, the stronger a draft is at any given position, the less likely a team's going to want to make a move for a tight end that has a big cap hit. And Fant's coming into the season was about $13.1 million. So to release him literally on the eve of training camp, make a pretty strong argument that's kind of dirty pool, kind of a shitty move. Not exactly ideal for Noah Fant, because right now, as we sit here today, 90-man rosters are full and teams have spent most of their available cap space. The ones that haven't are probably holding it back, either in the hopes of making deadline moves or to roll over to next year. And so the timing seems weird. Here are some assumptions that I'm going to make that I believe led to this deal being made, or this move being made yesterday. One is, I have to assume the Seahawks have been trying to trade Noah Fant, trying to find a market for him. The best opportunity for that, once the draft came and went, was when we look at what's happened in Pittsburgh and Miami over the last month. With Pittsburgh making a move to get Jonnu Smith out of Miami, and then Miami having a need, that was probably the best opportunity the Seahawks made. Instead, the Dolphins kind of surprised us all and went and convinced Darren Waller to come out of retirement, or he had decided to come out of retirement, I think the way the reports go, but he wanted to play in Miami. There was really kind of a limited motivation on his part to come back. And so it was a real cheap move for the Dolphins. They were able to renegotiate his deal, 1 year, $2 million. Certainly a lot less than they would have had to pay Noah Fant if they wanted to just trade for him, unless the Seahawks picked up some of that money. So the nuts and bolts of it, by releasing Noah Fant, they incur $4.5 million in dead cap because of the bonus they handed out last year. They save about $8.6, I think, million against the cap. I have to believe they thought they would have an opportunity to trade him, but they also wanted to see what they had on hand. It wasn't as if the rest of the tight end room was a slam dunk. Yeah, we all love A.J. Barner, and what he did for us as a rookie exceeded all of our expectations. But, the idea that you're just going to hand him tight end one and that he's the guy full-time moving forward, that's a lot of eggs to put into that one basket. First of all, you always have to account for attrition. Injuries are a thing. I think sometimes we as fans are way too quick to think that our roster is set in stone in certain areas without asking, what if? What if in that particular position group, one or two guys goes down, right? What if you don't have A.J. Barner? Well, now you're left with Eric Saubert, the free agent, 31 years old, journeyman, last played for the San Francisco 49ers, more of a role player. Good dual tight end. He can help you in the passing game, and he can help you as a blocker, but he's not elite at any of those things, which is why he's bounced around a little bit, and he's making just a little bit more than veteran minimum money. A.J. Barner, again, coming off a rookie year. You think you know what you have, but you need more than one as well, because Clint Kubiak uses the heck out of his tight ends. As much 12 personnel as anyone in the league, and as much 13 personnel as anyone in the league as well. So you have to have 3 or 4 reliable players at the tight end position. So they go and they draft Elijah Arroyo in the 2nd round. Loved him. Loved what I saw at the Senior Bowl. Dynamic talent, especially as a pass catcher. But there's enough that we see there on tape as a blocker to believe that he can be at least adequate there. He shined throughout OTAs. He shined in minicamp, doing all the things that you expect him to do, making some acrobatic catches, working the seam, showing off his athleticism. Okay, cool. Well, they have Arroyo. They don't need Fant anymore. Go look at Elijah Arroyo's college production. He hardly played. Never played a full season. Battled injuries his entire career. I believe off the top of my head, he played 7 games last year for Miami. Missed the first part of the season coming off, I think it was a knee injury. He has never put an entire healthy season on the books, let alone shown that he can be durable long term. So again, it just made all the sense in the world to me to hang on to Noah Fant all the way through camp, get to the cut to 53, see what you have, ask yourself how much conviction you have that you feel good about that position. And then, oh, by the way, that's also another point throughout the league where teams evaluate and they tweak their rosters one last time before going into week 1. So there may have been another opportunity to move on from him then. At least release him then if you really like what you've seen from Barner, Arroyo, Saubert, etc. We'll get to the etc. in just a second. The timing it made sense. There was absolutely no reason to move on from him. Now, the other counterpoint that some of you have offered throughout the offseason is, yeah, but that's some pretty significant money savings. You can use that money for other things. Well, as we woke up yesterday with Noah Fant still on the roster, the Seahawks had somewhere in the range of $24, $25 million in available cap space. So there was no pressing need to move on from him for the purposes of saving more cap space, because they don't need to right now. There's no urgency to do that. Another reason that I thought it would make sense to keep him into camp. Now, many have speculated, including myself, I threw this out yesterday when I reacted on Twitter to the news breaking, that, well, now they do have more money, close to $30 million in cap space now. Some of what you see on Over the Cap hasn't accounted for things like contingencies, injured reserve. There's money that teams hold back purposely and don't spend, so that they're set up for some of those things in the future. You don't want to spend all your money now. If you get down to zero now, you have no contingencies for later in the year. You can't make a move at the deadline. You can't go out and acquire a veteran to fill in for someone who gets hurt. So there's some of that. That's why you hear the term available cap space, spendable cap space, effective cap space, things like that. So it's around 28, according to Curtis Allen this morning, around $28 million after the Fant deal. Again, that's enough to go out and do anything you want, but there's no urgency to spend that money. Next point. Some of you have said, well, we have a bunch of young players at the end of their rookie contracts who are eligible now for contract extensions, so let's get on that. We can use some of this money. Potentially. But what have we talked about all offseason on the channel? Most of the young players that are now eligible for extension with the Seahawks are in a very precarious point in their ascension, in their development, in that they're not sure things. And so trying to determine what their market value would be is really difficult. Now, the news came out yesterday. Here's a good example. Kansas City Chiefs signed George Karlaftis to a new deal. I think it was 4 years, $85 million with about $52 million guaranteed. Am I getting that right off the top of my head? Pretty significant money for a guy who's been good, not great. Love Karlaftis, mocked him to the Seahawks a bunch that year, 2022, coming out in the draft. Love his motor. Little bit of Trey Hendrickson vibes to him early in his career, but not a player who has really broke out yet. 24.5 sacks over 4 seasons. Very good, very solid. Higher pressure rate than Boye Mafe, pretty significantly so, although Mafe has more tackles. Same draft, although Karlaftis in the first round, Mafe in the second round, but it does give you an idea of what Mafe's market might potentially be. Well, I'll ask you this. Are you willing to pay Boye Mafe $52 million guaranteed for 4 years right now? I'm not. He hasn't shown nearly the consistency to warrant that. He, that I can recall, has never taken over a game. He's not a guy that causes sleepless nights for defensive coordinators. I would argue that Karlaftis isn't either. He's a complementary piece, a very good one, which is kind of what I think Mafe could become. It was an aggressive move on the Chiefs' part to sign him. They obviously have conviction that he's a guy that they view as a foundational piece moving forward. I don't know that the Seahawks have that conviction about Boye Mafe. So, do you want to sign that deal now? When you have so many other guys? Next year, Devin Witherspoon up for an extension, right? This year, some of the other guys, Reek Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Charles Cross, although they could put that off till next year because they picked up the 5th-year option, Kenneth Walker. They're all kind of in the same boat for me, outside of Cross. Cross, I would absolutely, we've talked about this at length on the show, I would do an extension with him now if you can, although I think he might tend to want to wait with some of the improvements made in the offensive coaching staff and the scheme. He might think, or his agents might be telling him, look, you could have a really solid year this year and actually make yourself some money. So I think the Cross thing happens next year. But in Cross's case, and this is what the point I'm trying to get to, you don't need to clear cap space to extend Charles Cross. Because A, they have the cap space, and B, you would likely save money in 2025 by signing him to an extension. Most likely, most commonly, the first year of a new extension is the lowest cap hit, and they do that intentionally. They kind of push some things down the road based on how they think salaries slot in the future. Now, with a guy like Riq Woolen, his cap hit this year is only like $4.5 million, I think. So yeah, there's a good chance if you think he warrants a big contract like some of the young corners have gotten in the last couple of years. Most recently Sauce Gardner a couple of weeks ago. Same draft class, right? If you're ready to hand him a big deal, then his cap, it's pretty hard to lower. If you're going to give a guy $80 to $100 million, pretty hard to come up with a cap hit year one that's going to be lower than $4.5 million. So yeah, maybe in the case of Riq Woolen, you might increase your cap layout. But you don't need to go create cap space to make that happen. You already had 24 million before you moved on from Fant. You didn't have to do that. The other speculation, again, that I kind of fanned the flames of the other day on Twitter, yesterday, is could this be a precursor to a bigger move? You know, you look at the Karlaftis contract, you look at the TJ Watt contract, right, at the high end of the market. You want to go get TJ Hendrickson? Well, that's going to cost you some significant money. You're talking $30 million a year plus, maybe 35. Yeah, it's going to be a shorter term deal if you can convince him to sign an extension, which he says he wants to. In fact, at one point he says it's a requirement. He won't play on the last year of his deal no matter where he ends up. That you're going to have to do some maneuvering for. You're going to have to account for that financially, right? I don't think that now that might still happen, but I don't think it had any bearing at all on releasing Noah Fant. I think in that case that could have happened afterwards, right? You get the news that they've acquired Trey Hendrickson, there's going to be a new deal involved, Noah Fant's been released. That's kind of the way I feel like that would have went down. Now, I said I'd get to the et cetera, right? And this might be the variable in the whole equation that made the Seahawks comfortable making this move. And that is they have some other options. They have other options at tight ends. And that's Brady Quinn and Robbie Oots. Both guys that have played tight end. Oots during his entire career in college, Russell in college, and his entire career in the pros. It was announced early in the offseason that Brady Russell would be converting to fullback. Clint Kubiak now on board. He's an old school Shanahan offense guy. He likes to roster and use a fullback. Then they draft Oots out of Alabama. He was a fullback there, or a tight end there, although not used much in the passing game. More of a blocking tight end. So a real clear and obvious candidate to be converted to fullback. And while it's been framed ever since they drafted Oots that, hey, it's going to come down to, Brady Russell and Robbie Oots battling for the fullback position, the fact that they both have extensive tight end experience, it just gives you the flexibility that you need to make some of those other roster decisions. And so I think the reason behind the timing is twofold. One is they just wanted to wait out and hold out hope and wait until the last second just to make sure they'd exhausted all potential opportunities to trade Fant, get some sort of draft capital in return for him. And B, they wanted to make sure they had as much data, as much information as possible about their young tight end group that they felt comfortable moving Fant off the roster. So you have Barner, uncertainty coming out of his rookie year. Arroyo, uncertainty heading into his rookie year, but also with his injury history. You have Saubert, who Clint Kubiak knows very well from his time in San Francisco. They obviously have confidence there that he can play a solid role. And then you have Russell and you have Oots. It makes me a little nervous, to be honest, just to wrap all this up. Not having Fant on the roster. If one or two of those guys gets hurt, you're very quickly in the market for another tight end. And I know there's some undrafted guys that are intriguing, whatever, some small school. That's not the answer. Not going to be the answer, you guys. And so I see the vision. I understand it. I'm as disappointed as anyone, and many of you I know, that Fant just wasn't able to ever really show us that ceiling, that potential, and become the player that we thought he could be, that the Broncos thought he could be when they made him a first-round draft pick, and the Seahawks thought he could be because they actually had him with a first-round grade that year. And if he had lasted one more pick, we're considering taking him themselves that year. And then, of course, they insist on him being part of the Russell Wilson deal. He just never got there. Still 27, 28 years old. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for him to get out in the market now and find a perfect match with a team that needs a tight end. There's already some talk that the Bengals might be a really good match. Can you imagine catching passes from Joe Burrow in that offense? I still think there's a chance that Fant could have kind of a late career renaissance and catch 80 balls for someone. But it did get a little frustrating waiting for that to happen. And now you go out and you draft a guy like Arroyo who has even more upside athletically, which is saying something because Fant is an outstanding athlete for his size and his position, that the team just thought they felt comfortable enough with that group. So that's where we sit. I don't think it's a precursor. It doesn't mean that something's imminent. Some of the guys that we've talked about trading for as recently as a month ago are being snapped up, right? There's no longer a Jalen Ramsey available. There's no longer a TJ Watt available. Trey Hendrickson, it sounds like negotiations are underway again with the Bengals, and so I don't really know how much he's available anymore regardless. So that's where we sit. I don't think any fireworks are coming. I think what the Seahawks are doing is they're taking a look towards the future, and while having $28 million, I think I saw this morning that they have the 6th most effective cap space as we sit here today in the NFL. Better to have the space than not, but I think they're doing it a little bit more with an eye towards the future, having flexibility at the trade deadline, and also being able to roll some over towards next year when there could be a ton of heavy lifting with some of those young guys needing extension. Because I mentioned Reek, and I mentioned Boye Mafe, but I'd put Kenneth Walker in the same boat. He's never proven he can be healthy. That running back room is young, cheap, and talented. I don't think they're handing out any extension to Walker this year until they see how things go in the new offense, and then they'll make a decision moving forward. Kobe Bryant could be a possibility. And then Reek Woolen is a big mystery to me. I don't know. If the team feels strongly enough that he can be the man, then maybe we'll see that deal, and that will cut in a little bit to that cap space. So here's the plan over the next few days, you guys. Still getting settled in. It'll probably be until Wednesday that I'm able to set up my entire podcast studio. Staying at a friend's for the next couple of days in Seattle. And then I drop Christine off at the airport Wednesday morning to fly back to West Virginia. And then I'll be going to Seahawks practice. I'm kind of in limbo right now, just sitting and waiting for them to let me know what happens the next couple of days. And so somehow, some way, I will produce a show Wednesday night with thoughts on opening day of training camp, certainly, and I'll write about it on my Substack. Check that out, if you will. Still going to keep everything free there until the end of the week at least, so that you can get some training camp material moving forward before I turn on subscriptions. But be sure to follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. Be sure to subscribe, like, share this video, hit the bell if you want to get notified of any future content. So I'll should be all set up with my new studio on Wednesday, and then move forward from there. In the meantime, I'm Dan. Those are my thoughts on the Noah Fant thing. The next time I talk to you most likely will be from training camp on Wednesday. Watch my Twitter for updates. Also, one other thing, tonight, if you're watching this the day it comes out on Monday, going to be part of a crossover episode tonight of the Hawk Zone Rundown with Bryce Coots and Ryan McMillan over there on their great show. If you don't subscribe to them, get over there and fix that. But it's going to be a couple of us on there from some other shows as well. I know Michael Thompson's going to be on there. I'm getting a couple. I'm thinking about another event we're talking about doing on August 1st as well. Stay tuned for some news of that, especially if you're in the Seattle area. There's a hint. But anyway, that'll be tonight. I think I'm going to stream it on my channel as well, but if you don't see it there, check it out over on Bryce's channel at the Hawk Zone Rundown. So that will be tonight at 7:30 Pacific time. Until then, forever and always go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys. I'll see you soon.